Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel Books with Ray. I'm Rachel and today we're going to be doing my April wrap up. This month I read 12 books and 2 of them were rereads, so I am going to start the video off with the books that I reread and my ratings for them, and then we'll dive into the rest of the books. The first book that I reread this month is A Court of Thorns and Roses. I have read everything Sarah J Maas has written: Court of series, Crescent City series, and Throne of Glass series, and anyone who's a fan of Sarah J Maas knows that Crescent City 3 is going to be coming out in the beginning of 2024. So I figured I'm going to go ahead and start rereading A Court of series and the Crescent City series before January. So I did first read all of these books physically, and on my rereads I am doing them on audio. And of course, 5 out of 5. I love Sarah J Maas. I love A Court of series world, the romance, the action. So I'm really excited to dive in more. My favorite book of all time throughout all series is A Court of Mist and Fury. So I am about like 65% through that one, so I'll finish it in May and I cannot wait. I'm loving it so much. Then I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Same thing, I read this physically the first time and absolutely adored it. I ugly cried at the end of this book. It just overtook my entire life the first time I read it. So this time I listened to it on audio. Julia Whalen, one of the best audiobook narrators, narrates this book, and it was just as incredible the second time around. It's so emotional. So many lines in here are just beautifully written. It is gorgeous. The story that V.E. Schwab tells in this book about Addie LaRue and Henry and Luke, you know, it's kind of like a love triangle. It's just so interesting, like how she thought of this. Addie makes a deal with Luke, who is a demon, and she wants to live forever. She wants to be free. She wants to do what she wants. But the twist that Luke makes with her is no one can remember her. She's gonna live forever, but no one can remember her. Addie lives to be 300 years old, and then she meets Henry, who's a bookshop owner in New York City, and he remembers her out of all these years, all these people that she's met and had relationships with. And thus begins, you know, their love story, and Luke is thrown in there, and the ending of this broke my heart so much. 5 out of 5, one of my favorites of all time. So last month I read Twisted Love and Twisted Games. So this month I read Twisted Hate. It was pretty good. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It is heavily enemies to lovers, like almost like a bully romance, especially in the beginning. Super steamy. I liked, you know, when they started to be nice to each other. Yeah, it was pretty good. Then I read a series, is the Chestnut Spring series. I am obsessed with this series. The first 2 books, Flawless and Heartless, were 5 out of 5, and then the last one so far in the series, because it's not done yet, Powerless, I gave 4 out of 5. In Flawless, we follow Rhett, who is a bull rider, and he kind of gets himself in hot water, and his PR agent sends his daughter, Summer, to kind of like be his babysitter, work on his reputation, make sure he keeps himself out of trouble, and thus begins their romance. It is a cowboy romance to a T. It is so good. It is slow burn. Actually, all 3 of these books, like once you hit the 50% mark is when they start to get like physically romantic, so they are a little bit slower, but I did not feel that this was slow at all. I loved the 2 main characters. I loved the storyline and the tension between them. It was so good. 5 out of 5. Now, Heartless is about Cade, Rhett's brother, and he's a farmer. He lives on the ranch with his dad, and he has a son named Luke, and he is struggling because he's trying to find Luke a nanny. And Summer gets her like fiery wild card, just really independent best friend Willa to be the nanny without Cade's approval. So Willa becomes his live-in nanny, and they're so opposites. Like I just described Willa. Cade is so grumpy and mean, and he's like a stick in the mud, and it's just like the opposite of Willa. Again, the tension in this book is so good. Like, he doesn't want her there, but Luke loves her, and she's really like shockingly good at her job. It is age gap. Cade is significantly older than Willa, so he's like, this is inappropriate, but also like, I'm kind of obsessed with her. It is so good. I love Willa so much in this book. She's one of my favorite female characters I've ever read. 5 out of 5 for this one. Now, Powerless is a little bit different. We follow their best friend Jasper, who's kind of like an honorary brother. Like their dad kind of adopted him when he was younger. He's a hockey player. And then we're following Cade and Rhett's cousin, Sloane, and Sloane is a ballerina. Sloane is set to be married to this like rich guy who she doesn't even really like, and she decides on their wedding day to not marry him, and Jasper like helps her become the runaway bride. And something else happens in the book, and it's kind of like a road trip story. But Jasper and Sloane grew up together. Sloane would spend her summers at their ranch. Friends to lovers, childhood friends to lovers. My only complaint about this is very sad. There are a lot of sad elements. Jasper like has a really hard time communicating, which was frustrating, but it just wasn't fun and lighthearted like Heartless and Flawless were. So I did give this 4 out of 5 stars. There are 2 more books in the series, which I cannot wait for, so stay tuned. It's come out at the end of this year, I think. Then I read the only thriller that I read this month, which was The Only Survivors by Megan Miranda. I actually really liked this book. This I gave 4 out of 5. We follow a group of friends who in high school went through a really traumatic event that killed a lot of their classmates. So you're kind of following that storyline, and then in the present time, the survivors every year meet at a beach house at the Outer Banks and just kind of like pay respects to those who pass and just kind of like keep that bond going. But some of their friends in their friend group are like committing suicide, so we're trying to figure out why that's happening. There's a couple of different mysteries that we follow throughout this book. I enjoyed it. I didn't see the end twist coming. It's pretty short chapters, fast pace. So if you're looking for like a bingeable thriller, especially for like new thriller readers, I think you guys would really like this one. Then I went on a Catherine Center kick. I read Happiness for Beginners and How to Walk Away. So Happiness for Beginners is actually going to be a Netflix movie with one of the main characters from Yellowstone. So I love Catherine Center. I've read The Bodyguard and I've read Things We Save in a Fire. So I already love her, but I can't wait to watch this movie. So I knew I had to read the book. I read actually both of these on audiobook. They are so short. I mean, they're literally both like right at 300 pages, but the font is really big too. Happiness for Beginners follows a woman who is newly divorced and she's trying to like re-find herself. She decides to throw caution to the wind and go on a wilderness retreat, something completely out of her comfort zone. And she ends up going with her little brother's best friend. It's just so lighthearted, it's good-natured, it's fun. It did not make me want to go on a wilderness retreat, but like I'm happy for our main character. But it was so cute. I gave this 4 out of 5. And then How to Walk Away is about our main character who is terrified of flying, and she is dating someone who is a pilot. In the very beginning of the book, they go on like a little plane ride and he is piloting it, and it's like a really, really small plane. And what do you know? They get in a plane crash and he comes away fine, but she is not fine. So you go through her like mental, emotional, physical journey of what that plane crash did to her, and going through physical therapy with her really like strict, funny Irish physical therapist, and just her overcoming a lot. And I really enjoyed the story. I also gave it a 4 out of 5. Then I picked up Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I love Abby Jimenez. I've read every book she's written except the last one in her Friend Zone series, which I think is called Life's Too Short. I've heard that one is really sad, so I'm like pushing that off until I'm in the mood to cry. But Yours Truly can be read as a standalone, but it also follows a side character that was in her book that she came out last year with, which is Part of Your World. And if you haven't read Part of Your World, you need to. It is one of my all-time favorite books. But in this one, we follow Brianna, who is a ER doctor, and her brother is in kidney failure. A new doctor named Jacob gets added to the hospital, and they call him Dr. Death. He has a horrible first day of work. A lot of his patients pass away. Jacob is one of my favorite male characters. He is so sweet. He's the definition of a cinnamon roll male character. He also really struggles with anxiety, social anxiety, and the way that it's written in this book is inaccurate, and I loved that representation so much. But Jacob decides to be her brother's donor. Kind of in response to that, she decides to be his fake girlfriend and go to his ex-girlfriend's wedding with him. My favorite tropes, fake dating, enemies to lovers because they definitely don't get along in the beginning. There are letters that they write to each other throughout this book, and the letters, it's like, do I need to become pen pals with my husband? Because it was so romantic and sweet and special, and there's just so many different aspects of this book that are so unique, and I loved it so much. The only thing, there is a lot of miscommunication and assumptions throughout this book, so I did give it a 4 out of 5 for that reason, but I still really loved it. Of course, I'm saving my 2 favorite books for last, and these 2 books are my favorite books of the entire year. I will be shocked if anything beats these books. These are incredible. The first one is Happy Place by Emily freaking Henry. Happy Place, you guys. It is so good. We follow Harriet, who has 2 best friends from college, and every year they meet at their beach house in Maine. Harriet is engaged to our other main character named Wynn. They all go to this beach house. Harriet and Wynn are actually no longer together, but for this weekend they decide to not tell their friends. They just need to fake date for the sake of everyone's friendship and peace over the weekend. We also get past timelines of them falling in love and how they met, and their love story is so beautiful. Emily Henry's writing, you guys, there's just so many things that hit in my heart reading this book. I am not a big annotator. I don't tab books. I don't write in my books, but this one I did. I literally had a highlighter next to me the entire time. I was so in love with our 2 main characters, and the way that these friendships are described, and these women in their 30s and how they feel about that, and just everything was so relatable and so beautiful. Just can't recommend this book enough. It is 5 out of 5. It is one of my favorites of all time. I am so in love with everything about this book. And lastly, my other favorite book of the month and of the year and of all time is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Okay. In this fantasy world where there is a school for these kids who are up and coming into society, and there are different like quadrants that you can be placed in, and it is your choice on which one to go into. We have like the healers, who are obviously like kind of nurses. We have scribes, who are really knowledgeable in history, they know everything, and the writers, and writers are kind of like their military. Chances are you will die before you graduate. Like, so many people die. It's very rigorous, like they do it on purpose because you're going to be defending the country, and they want to make sure that they weed out the weak. We follow Violet, and she is very physically weak. Like, she spent her whole life training to be a scribe. Her mom is the headmaster of the school and plays like a really prominent role in the country, and her mom is like, no, you're not going to be a scribe, you will be a writer whether you survive or not. So Violet feels like she doesn't kind of have a choice, and her mom is like forcing her into this, so she does it, and no one thinks she's going to survive, no one thinks she's going to do well. We also get an incredible enemies to lovers love story. I'm not going to say anything about that, but just know it is a Court of series romance in here. Okay, like, so good. Okay, I laughed, I sobbed, like sobbed, so sad, so good. I was kicking my feet, I was squealing, I was screaming, I was like, I could not sit still, I was on the edge of my seat. This book is so good. If you like a Court of series, if you like Harry Potter, if you like Game of Thrones, if you like The Poppy Wars by R.F. Kuang, the movie How to Train Your Dragon, any of those things, you will love this book. There is something in this book for everybody. I just hope it blows up the way that it deserves because it is so incredible. And that's it. Those are the 12 books I read this month. It was an incredible reading month for me. So excited for May. So drop down in the comments below what your favorite book was this month, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.